All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're tackling something you use every single day. I mean, constantly.
Let me guess. Something like, I don't know, breathing.
Haha, good one. Close, but even more fundamental. We're talking about names.
Names.
Yep, names. Or to get all fancy about it, nomenclature. But honestly, it's more than just a fancy word. We're going to really explore how these, seemingly simple words shape how we see the entire world.
Interesting. I mean, I never really thought about it that deeply.
Right, and the sources we've got for this deep dive, really fascinating stuff. They dig into how these seemingly basic words actually are, like the building blocks of our entire understanding of everything.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where do we even begin with something that, feels so basic? Like, what's so complex about names?
Well, one source starts with this idea of the brain being like a blank slate when we're born.
Blank slate, huh? Okay, yeah, I've heard that before.
So then how do names actually play into that whole blank slate thing?
Well, think about it like this. Imagine that blank slate, right? Literally a blank slate. Every single time, like every time you learn a new name, it's like you're drawing a line on that slate, like a connection. And your brain, it starts linking that word to something else, an object, an idea, a feeling, a whole bunch of experiences, everything.
Oh, I see. So it's like those word association games,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you say cat, and I immediately say meow.
And all those connections, all those lines on the slate, they just build up over time.
Exactly. They kind of become our shortcuts, Like, think about it. We don't have to relearn what a tree is every single time we see a tree.
Because the name, tree, just instantly brings all that knowledge to mind, all those connections.
Boom, like that.
Which is why I think it's so important to get those names right in the beginning, right from the start. One of the sources actually mentions this analogy about teaching a child the wrong color. And it's not just, some silly thought experiment. It gets pretty deep.
Oh, no, it makes you think. It's way more than just a funny idea. Well, imagine, right? If you're always told that blue is yellow.
I mean, how would you ever build a reliable, a trustworthy understanding of, the world around you?
Exactly. It would be total chaos. And those early mix-ups with names, they can actually mess with a kid's their cognitive development.
Really?
Yeah, like it can affect their ability to categorize things, to understand, to make sense of new information.
Wow, that's actually kind of profound when you think about it. It makes you realize how much we depend on these basic labels for everything. One source describes it with this really vivid image, like a pair of glasses that when you put them on, suddenly clarify a blurry blob into a perfect cupcake.
Ooh, that's such a good image. It really gets it, it captures how a name acts like a lens, focusing, bringing an object into clear focus for our brains. And that whole process, that bringing into focus, that's categorization, right?
Right.
Our brains, they're always grouping things together, similar things, based on, things they share, characteristics. And names, they're a huge part of that, a huge part of how we categorize.
So it's like we're taking this massive chaotic world and organizing it, making sense of it all. No wonder scientists are so picky, so meticulous about their nomenclature, like one source talks about. They need that total clarity, that precision for research, for communicating, for everything.
Absolutely. Like in science, a name, it isn't just a label you slap on something. It's a precise, super specific definition. And that ensures everyone's on the same page. It's not quite how language works in, our normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, like slang, it's constantly changing, new words popping up. Language is way more fluid and adaptable in everyday life.
Totally. But I think that scientific precision, it's fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And one source uses that example again, the one about teaching a kid the wrong name for a color, but they use it to highlight just how important accuracy is, especially in those fields where, even a tiny misunderstanding could have huge consequences.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the power of names. They shape how we understand things, but they can also be used to completely reshape that understanding. Kind of like that George Carlin joke. Electricity is really just organized lightning.
Oh, man, Carlin. He always had a way of making you think, He could take something you thought was totally normal, totally familiar.
And then, bam, reframe it.
In a way that was hilarious, but also, insightful.
And that reframing, it's key. Humor, metaphors, analogies, all those things, they're tools. They can help us understand these big, complex ideas by connecting them to something we already get, something familiar. It's like putting on those glasses, you know? From that cupcake analogy, suddenly you see the whole thing in a new light.
So where does this all leave us? We've talked about how names are like mental shortcuts, how getting them right from the start is super important, and how even a simple word can be this powerful tool that shapes our whole understanding.
Here's a final thought to chew on. What's a word or a name, maybe something you use all the time, that you kind of take for granted? Like you never even think about it. Take a second, just think about where it came from, how it's changed over time. You might be surprised by what you discover. Like so many layers of meaning hidden right there.
That's a great point. Lots to think about. It really goes to show that even the simplest parts of language, the words we use every day, can have this incredible depth to them. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of nomenclature.
Thanks for having me.